Hey everyone. In this episode, I had the chance to sit down with John Jantsch, the author of Duct Tape Marketing. He talks about his approach to overcoming some challenges that are in small business marketing today, especially the recent shifts in trends and available martech tools and all of the changes in buyer behavior. He shares some of his insights into things like attribution and optimizing your customer success track and presenting yourself as a thought leader. There's a ton to cover in this one, so let's get started. I remember it plain as day because we were sitting. It was in Miami. We were at Email Summit, and we were sort of chatting about your new book, Duct Tape Marketing, at the time. So yeah, so
you remember it like yesterday. I remember it like it was several decades ago.
Depends on what lens you sort of look at it through, but
sure,
yeah, absolutely. Lots happened since then. So
yeah,
and I guess that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. Is lots happened, and you got a new book that's sort of talking through what's happened since, and just a really good, I think, feel for what's happening now, from what I understand.
Yeah.
So, is there anything specifically you'd like to cover? I know you dropped 3 or 4 points in. I wanted to specifically talk about sort of the buyer customer journey.
Sure.
But was there anything else that you wanted to just?
Obviously, I'm very focused on the topics in the new book, but they're basically anything to do with marketing strategy is probably in the book. So we can definitely talk about the buyer journey at length. In fact, the keynote that I've been giving for this book is called Rethinking the Customer Journey. So it's a big part of what kind of seems to be getting people's attention right now.
Okay. So very cool. Yeah. So these things, they typically are like, we try to do them like 40 minutes, something like that. And then we chop it down. So, but I'll hit on like maybe 4 or 5 points and then we'll.
Okay. Sounds great.
Yeah. We'll
Anything
wrap it
you
up.
want to talk about? It's fine with me.
Very cool. I appreciate it. And at some point, I think I'm on one of your podcast episodes. we're doing something in the next month or so, from what I understand. So it'll be fun. All right. So we're gonna do like a cold open. I'll just start talking, and then I'll do a pre-recorded intro later on. Okay,
that's fine. Yep.
So today I'm here with John Jantsch. You may remember him in his first book, Duct Tape Marketing, which he had written, I think, back in 2007, if memory serves. And I remember having a conversation with John in Miami, talking about, I was running Marketing Sherpa, and I remember sitting in Miami in the sweltering heat, and we were talking a little bit about his new book, and so much has changed since then. It's such a fantastic book and grounded in the principles for small businesses, but really looking forward to talking to him today about what's going on now, like what's changed, what's evolved, and getting to catch up a little bit. So John, it's great having
you. Thanks for having me. And Marketing Sherpa has kind of a special place in my heart. I don't know if you remember this, but 2005, 2006-ish timeframe, everybody was jumping in blogging. I was kind of early on, had been blogging, and Marketing Sherpa was one of the first kind of major publications doing ranking blogs, like top blogs in marketing and top blogs in small business. And I won. Of course, I think there was a little bit of electioneering that went on, but I was voted the best blog for small business and marketing by Marketing Sherpa a couple of years in a row early on in those days. And that certainly played a role in kind of telling the world about what this duct tape marketing thing was.
Yeah, I think it's such a neat premise too. And maybe if we could just sort of take a step back and kind of look at that real quickly, like what was sort of going through your mind when you wrote the book originally?
Yeah. So the book is actually a distillation of the work I had been doing with small business owners. I, like a lot of people, I jumped into business as a marketing consultant. All I really knew is I could hustle work. So I got big clients, little clients, big projects, little projects. And I got hired by a few small business owners to essentially be their marketing department. And I really enjoyed that. But I had worked for an ad agency, and the way that ad agencies worked with their clients wasn't working for me for small businesses. So they didn't have the same budgets, didn't have even the same attention span. So I created a systematic approach, or at least it was my system for trying to work with small business owners, where I would walk in and say, look, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. Here are the results we hope to get. And here's what it costs. And I was really trying to solve my frustration, and I think I tapped into still what is today a great frustration for small businesses. It's very hard and gotten harder to buy marketing services because there's so many pieces. Everybody's selling a piece of the puzzle. So somebody coming in saying, look, we're going to install a system and you're going to know what it costs, really was music to their ears. And my practice really took off with that approach. But I decided as I started writing about it online and communicating what I was doing, and I was actually going to create a course and a product around it that I could sell online. I decided I had to have a name for it. It couldn't just be John's great system. And so I stumbled on the idea of duct tape marketing as really a way to give what I was doing kind of a brand name. I think it came to me really because, frankly, I'm a small business owner. I was working with small businesses, and it just felt like the perfect metaphor in some ways for what it's like to work in a small business. You just need approaches that are simple, effective, affordable, don't always have to be pretty. They just have to work. So I think that fortunately, that metaphor really resonated with small business owners, and it actually became the name of my company, the name of my book, the name of my podcast, the name of my network of consultants. I really put it on everything as well as it being the title of my first book.
I think it's really true, too. A lot of agencies fail just simply because they are trying to apply something that has been done. Maybe they've come from a successful in-house marketing team, and they want to go out and do some freelance or start up their own agency. And there's so many of them that fail because it's a different dynamic, right? It's a sort of, you're spending half your time going and hustling for new business, building demand, creating a brand about why you're different from the plethora of other agencies that are out there doing the same exact thing and trying to differentiate while you're trying to, keep your own clients from dropping. And so that balancing act is something that I see a lot in agencies, the smaller ones, especially under 3-4 people, something like that, where they just burn out. They burn out as a team. Somebody drops out. And so there is a lot of that. And I think if you do have somebody who has seen the last page of the playbook, so to speak, right? They've watched the movie to the end, they know how it works, and they're able to sort of construct a path to help smaller agencies be able to come in and set up some infrastructure, build something that works and has been proven. It just gives you, as an agency, it sort of gives you a lot of confidence that you're doing the right things, you're approaching things the right way, because it's sort of been done there before. And I don't know, I say this a lot, but marketing and even like being an agency, even more so, is really a lonely business. It's because you really are in this place, where you have to be perceived as the expert in the space that you're in. You're not able to go out and sort of be vulnerable in a lot of ways, to be able to learn and understand things and get better. And you just not a whole lot of people that understand what it's like to be in an agency or running your own agency. So I think it's like, I think the other thing too that sort of annoys me a little bit, if I'm going to get on my soapbox, is there's so many, you can be your own agency in 30 days or less sort of nonsense that's out there on Facebook and YouTube. And you just look at all of the ads that are out there, and it's not systemic, right? There's no recipe or best practices that are put in place to get you where you want to go. I think it's just sort of sets people up for disappointment and failure. So anyway, I think, it's just one of the many reasons why I think your book has resonated over the years.
Thank you. I've frankly, selfishly created this repeatable system because I wanted something that was more efficient, that I could get better at. And truthfully, once I saw that's what was getting people results, I think one of the mistakes a lot of agencies make is that they think the client knows what they need. And so we actually respond in many cases to what they tell us. Oh, I need this, or I need that, or I can't get this done. And so we take on projects, and we're constantly having to make that up, what it is, how we're going to work with somebody, or a certain client doesn't want to follow our process for intake, so we let them do whatever they want to do. And I think that for me, selfishly, if I wanted to stay a solopreneur and build a partnership team and build repeatable systems, I just had to find people that really wanted that wanted that consultation from me, as opposed to just a project manager or somebody that would just be seen as a vendor almost. Because I think a lot of agencies are discovering today that without a unique point of view, without a unique system, without a process for educating and onboarding and doing the work that they do to get results for clients, it's kind of a race to the bottom. If we're selling services and we're doing websites, I guarantee you and I could both go out tomorrow and find somebody promising to do a WordPress custom design for $500. Right. So if we're sitting around waiting to serve our clients in that fashion, we're really headed to a price race and nothing else. And so my whole approach and approach that I've really promoted is you've got to have this different approach. You've got to have a way to differentiate yourself. Calling marketing a system and that it starts with strategy before tactics was a huge differentiator. Not everybody wanted that, but the people that did want that saw me as offering and my consultants as offering something different.
I think as marketers and agency owners, it's what we preach to our clients, but we do really poorly ourselves, right?
Amen to that. Yeah. No question.
And I think it's, again, just having that infrastructure, having that blueprint to be able to work all of those things out is sort of the difference between, in a lot of ways, between success and failure. So I guess with that said, like, what are you up to now? What's going on? It's been, that was in 2007. So like what?
When I wrote Duct Tape Marketing, I was essentially an agency, a local agency for the most part. Obviously, I had gone online, I was blogging, I had started podcasting already, and I had a book that really resonated with a lot of folks. I didn't really want to build an agency with lots of consultants internally. And so I took that approach and licensed it. And I now have a network of independent marketing consultants, about 150 agencies and consultants around the world that actually license the Duct Tape Marketing system. We train, quite frankly, we collaborate tremendously as a group and really created an organization of folks that are using this same point of view of marketing as a system, now working with thousands of small business owners on any given day, really taking our repeatable approach. And the thing that I've discovered over the years is it's also, if you want to scale an agency as a solopreneur, you better have a repeatable system, and you better have a way to get clients value and a way to demonstrate that you can get them value. And a great deal of what we've done in this network is it's just a research engine for continuing to see how marketing evolves, continuing to see what works, and continuing to document all the systems and process for how it works. I too frequently get on my soapbox about the pay me $5,000 and I'll turn you into a digital agency and show you how to pick a niche and run Facebook ads to that niche and you'll be rich. We've built something that what I like to say is really targeting true small businesses, true agencies that actually want to become much more profitable and scale. And it's not going to happen in 30 days. That's the one guarantee I can make you.
I think being honest with people and upfront and authentic is probably one of the big tenets that I think you sort of operate on. And just over the years, I've sort of kept up with some of the stuff that you've done. I think that is the truth. And if just knowing you a little bit from, back in the day, I think it hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed in the last 14 years or so. And I think it's really impressive because that's very few people, I think, can say that. So is there so obviously I think September 21st is your new book that's coming out, and you've got obviously a very large following of people that just love some of your content as you've been putting it out. What is it what can they expect? What's in store?
Sure. So the book's called The Ultimate Marketing Engine, and subtitles 5 Steps to Ridiculously Consistent Growth. This is very much a strategy book, and I think that we're in a time where strategy is probably more important than the latest Facebook hack that somebody might write about in a book. I wanted to take my life's work, frankly, of trying to help people understand that strategy has got to come before tactics, and put it in this book. And I have some very specific approaches to strategy. In this book, I'm going to introduce you to something I call the customer success track, which is really my approach to really looking totally differently at customers. Instead of looking at them as somebody you sell to, a transaction, beginning to look at them and say, okay, what stage are they in today, but where do they want to go? Can we build our business to be that engine that actually takes them from where they are to where they want to go, that actually creates transformation over simply valuing transactions? And so the customer success track is really my approach to that. But the key to that is I actually start the book by saying the ultimate marketing engine is a successful customer. But the key to that, one of the keys to that is you can't make every customer successful. One of the things that I preach as part of the strategy is that you've got to start narrowing your focus to the top fourth or the top 20% of your ideal customers, the most profitable customers today who are having a great experience because you're delivering a lot of value to them. They're probably referring you or talking about you or evangelizing your business. That group, some percentage of them would do 10 times business with you if you showed them how, if you discovered how. And some even smaller percentage might do 100 times more business with you. And to me, that's the way you sustainably grow and scale a business rather than constantly going out there and looking for the next new project or the next new client. And so there's a great deal of focus on in this book on narrowing who you serve. I do get into how I believe content has changed today, how I believe the various channels that once we understand who that ideal customer is, once we understand the problem we really solve for them, I do go then in depth into some of the tactics to actually attract those folks and guide them on the journey that they want to go with you. And the idea of customer or buyer's journey is also very much at the heart of this book, because to me, that's the framework for how you actually create and use strategy as a way to build a business.
So you're teaching how to research your most successful or where you're going to have the most success, and then developing the ICP around that and then obviously subsequent to that, like targeting so that you can bring in more of those types of people.
Yes, that's a big part of it. I've worked with so many businesses over the years that are just, the one I love to pick on is a waterproofing company, basement waterproofing company we worked with. And when we started doing a little research, we found that 80% of their profits actually came from just straight up basement waterproofing. And yet on their website, they had 27 different services that they offered, some of which they did once maybe for somebody years ago. And so that was a perfect example of saying, look, it's not just a matter of picking a niche or something. This is obvious. This is where your money comes from. These are your happiest customers. These are the ones leaving 5-star reviews. And yet somebody who is new to your business would have to plow through all this other stuff to even understand that you are the king at doing this kind of work. And so we focused their entire messaging around the problems that they solved for people who needed basement waterproofing. And their business just skyrocketed because they were really great at doing that work. And once we got the world to know that's what they do better than anyone else, we were able to go out and attract more of those ideal customers.
One of the things that I've learned, I think, over the years, and maybe you can identify with this, but it's shockingly easy to grow something. Usually what we have to do is sort of remove the impediments that are keeping that growth from happening. And so if you think about a plant or a tree or a flower or something, like a lot of the time, it's not, hey, how much fertilizer can I keep putting on this thing to make it, grow? It's, let me get rid of all of the weeds that are around it. They're, sucking all the nutrients out of the soil. Let me go and make sure that the shade is out of the way so that this thing is getting the right amount of sunlight. Those sort of things. Mm-hmm. I think that's the same thing in business too, is most of the time we tend to get in our own way because we're just introducing so much friction into the buying process.
One of the things that I love to say is an effective strategy will do two things. It will help what to do, and it will help you know what not to do. And I think that's really what happens to a lot of folks, especially with all the chatter about social media. And I had a business who was a professional services business. Very few of their customers are looking for them on TikTok, and yet they wanted to go deep into TikTok. They think that's the next frontier. I think that's the kind of thing that really has businesses scattering their attention and their priorities so much that they can't really build this momentum. And so by having an effective strategy that says, here's who our ideal customer is, here's the problem we solve for them, here's where they get their information, here's the level of trust they need in order to want to hire or engage somebody like us, then all of a sudden all the content we produce avenues, all the channels that we're going to be on really reveal themselves in a lot of ways. And it does allow us to say, unless we have an unlimited budget and unlimited amount of resources and attention, then we need to narrow our focus to stay in our lane that's going to be the most effective.
I love that. I think there's so much to unpack there. I wouldn't even know where to start, but it is the starting point. And we talk a lot about that on this show, where we talk about how we want to know our customers so well that it's almost like we're reading a page out of their diary, or we've been reading their email, and you want them to have that kind of reaction, that they really they get that you get what their issues are, what their pain points are, what they're looking for, what they're trying to solve. And you're doing that, and you're talking to them in their own language. I think using the words that they use, it's just a game changer, I think, for so many small businesses that are trying to get in front of the right customer.
Yeah, and the good news is the world has made it, the world that we live in, the digital world has made it so easy to get that information. Well, first and foremost, you do need to be looking for it. You need to be asking. But a lot of times the questions that people ask, you've got all kinds of data now, the questions people are putting into search engines. Go scan several million 5-star Google reviews like I have, and you will start seeing that people are telling the world, here's what I'm not getting from other people and I'm getting from this company. So obviously looking at those, and you start using those words and those phrases that you see repeatedly in email subject lines, above the fold on your website, for ideas of content that you should be creating for your FAQs. It's there for the taking if you really just go past the fact that you have 4.8 aggregate stars. That's awesome, but read the actual words and sentences and themes that start repeating themselves, and you have some tremendous clues to how you should be talking about what it is that you do.
I think that's right. I think depending on the company size, but every small business is going to have some sort of inbound support system or ticket system or just help desk system these days. And
sales
that's another
folks
place
too.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And that's the best place, right? If you want to sort of get like really quickly to the point of where the issues are with your customers or your potential customers, just diving in and just listening and watching support tickets and sales calls. And what happens, and I've been in this situation just personally, where as a small business owner back in my past life, what I would do, like the bigger my company got, the more removed I got from that process. So I was really good at it at the beginning because I was like the only person. Right. And then we added somebody, and then we added a support person, and then add some extra layers of people. And the more removed you are, and it's surprising, I think, at least it was to me, how fast the landscape changes and how fast buyer behavior changes. And who the customer I knew 2 years ago is not the same customer, and they don't buy the same way today, that they did then. And I've really been advising people this last year, imagine the change. Nobody knows how to do anything anymore. If you're not going back and looking at every single one of your follow-ups, every single one of your instructions, every single one of your sign-up forms, you are dramatically underestimating what's gone on in the last 18 months. And it sort of informs like what kind of content you need to be creating, what kind of topics you need to be talking about, not only email, but, actually on site and other places, landing page, et cetera. I just copy. It makes you better across the board. Yeah. So
and just even spending time going reviewing. How many of us have written that email sequence 8 years ago and we don't even remember what it says? Whether, let alone is it still effective or represent what we stand for? So just actually going back and reviewing stuff, frequently is a great practice.
Yeah, I think it's really great advice. And so the book, as you're building, or as you were originally putting this thing together and you were writing it, you said it was sort of a culmination of your life's work. I think I'm sort of paraphrasing there, but you've been learning a lot. Let's say even over the last, let's call it 3 to 5. That was interesting. We'll edit that out. So you've been learning a lot over, say, the last 3 to 5 years. What specifically, like, what has changed in the marketing landscape to you? Like, what's really like the one or two things that have just
Sure. We've been talking about changes, and obviously the last decade, things have changed dramatically. The last 5 years, just the names of all the networks that have come up in the last 5 years would indicate a lot of changes going on. But to me, I think the thing that we have to pay attention to that's changed the most is the way people choose to become customers. A lot of the customer journey today used to be kind of the hourglass. We'd create demand in a linear fashion and squeeze a few people out of there, and voila, they'd become loyal customers. Steps and stages in the customer journey today, the buyer's journey today, are really out of our control. Think about your own buying today. We do a ton of research, and we ask people, and we visit websites, and we go to review sites. And before we pick up a phone or fill out a form to contact somebody, we've probably gone a long way down the buyer's journey without that company even knowing that we looking at them or engaging with their content. And so I think that we have to understand is our role today is much more, I like to call it, instead of creating demand, I like to say that it's much more about organizing behavior, the behaviors that people want to engage in with the companies that they buy from. I detail or put in great detail in this book something I call the marketing hourglass, which is a framework for my customer journey, which has 7 stages, which are know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. The hourglass metaphor really borrows obviously heavily from the funnel. The funnel, you still do have to get some percentage of people out there to know you exist and to consider buying from you or engaging you. But I think that's unfortunately where a lot of marketers today still stop. It's like, I got the order, marketing's done. And I think the real opportunity for a lot of businesses is to then flip that hourglass over, or that funnel over for the bottom shape of the hourglass, because I think our greatest opportunity is to grow with our customers, certainly to retain our customers, to do more with our customers, and turn some percentage of those customers into evangelists or referral sources for our business. So if we focused, I think if we focus more attention on the customer experience, that can actually be a greater source of lead generation than just trying to fill up the top of that funnel again. So by realizing, by really using that framework and realizing that our customers and prospects' questions and objectives and goals really change at each stage of that journey, I think it does help inform the tactics. It definitely helps inform what content we're going to need, including content after somebody becomes a customer. And so for me, that focus on really understanding the behavior that people want to go through, I think it really makes it easier for you to decide the tactics that are going to best support you being a guide through those stages of the customer journey.
I love that. I don't know, about a month or so ago, I did this LinkedIn post where I was talking about how that behavior sort of represents itself in the numbers and graphically. And one of the things that I did, you ever watch The Price is Right? When I was a kid, I would watch The Price is Right.
Yeah.
And there was this game, it was called Plinko. Do you remember that one? And you'd put the little disc in the top and it would bounce around until it kicked out the bottom. That is almost precisely like if you were to visualize what happens with demand gen and then sort of performance marketing at the bottom as you're capturing that demand and turning them into customers, sort of what's happening. It's very sort of, you put something in the top, you put dollars in the top, you put unique visitors in the top, something like that. And ultimately it bounces around because the buyer journey is different. It comes in from all sorts of different places. And I think one of the things that we do today that really hurts us is we focus so much on the bottom of the funnel that what is that last click attribution sort of behavior that's actually driving that sale. But what's ended up happening is that's not what is happening today. What's happening today is somebody came in, they heard you on a podcast, then they went to your website, and then they listened to some other, or they subscribed to some email that is on your email list, and then they got an email, and 6 months later, right, they become a customer. You have no idea like what initially influenced that initial customer to find you and to resonate with your message, or what your message resonates with them. And I think that's the thing is we struggle with that, right? As marketers, because we want to ROI everything. We want to be able to make it show up in a meaningful cost per acquisition, or CAC metric, something like that, to be able to say this is a good channel and it works well. instead of maybe standing back a little bit and saying, how do I buy something online? How do I buy software? How do I buy a product online? And it's exactly the way you just mentioned it. It's, okay, I'm going to go to a review system that's going to, objective review system that's going to say, here's what is good or bad about this product. I'm going to see what's going on social media or some other channel. I'm going to be able to look around, and I'm going to talk to my colleagues or people that I know that are, using the product already. Like, it's a multi-touch, not to be necessarily confused with multi-touch attribution, but it's a multi-touch sort of process these days.
Yeah, there's no question. And I tell you the other part that I think a lot of people leave out. I intentionally have those steps of know, like, and trust as really a big part of what marketing's job is to do. And a lot of people want to go from know to buy. I run an ad, I want somebody to buy from me. And what happens in between there is that's where we actually filter out non-ideal clients. And that like and trust phase is where somebody understands our process, how we're different, why they should expect to pay a premium for our products and services. And it's that whole education process as part of the buyer journey that is what really leads to you attracting the right clients, not just clients.
I love that. I think it's really good advice for anybody who's either an agency or a small business that is working on developing out channels and identifying those, what's working, what's not working. I'm curious, because I'm always fascinated by things like attribution. Do you have any thoughts, how do you work with clients, or how do you teach agencies to work with clients who are sort of struggling with the stakeholder or the client saying, how do I know that this is what drove the sale?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think that a lot of what happens along the journey, we don't see, we don't have any way to measure necessarily. And so I don't get too caught up in trying to have these data visualizations that show me all of the last touch attribution. Having said that, I do think there's a happy medium. I think we do need to know channels that seem to be producing results. We do need to set goals for conversion and try to measure at least, okay, this is working, this is not working at all type of determinations. And certainly A, B, C, D, F, G, variations of ads to test what got the activity that we wanted. But I've never been one to really lock down on saying I have to figure out exactly how all of this is coming to me. I think you want to have as much data, access to as much actionable data as possible. And the way that I really like to do things is to experiment quickly where maybe all I'm testing is an ad to a landing page that has one call to action, and I can measure what was the results of what I was trying to get as a conversion pretty quickly, and then I might actually use that in something that's going to produce ROI. But I think that having goals, having ways to track conversions are certainly important, but they're not necessarily if you can't have something set up that is going to tell you exactly if this ad paid or this video paid. And think about the things that we put out there in the buyer's journey. There's probably no call to action in many cases. I know that being on a podcast, for example, is good for the brand. It's good for creating more awareness, but there's no call to action necessarily that I can track back from appearing there. We have to just know that if we're getting in front of the right audience, then that's going to be a good use of our time. And then what are we doing that maybe we've attracted somebody who is now a new listener or a new visitor to our website? What have we done to help move them along the journey?
Yep. Or if you look at it, if you're engaging with your prospect in such a way that you're doing it in an authentic and helpful way, and it's not overly salesy, and what I tell my sales team is don't be smarmy kind of tactic, where when I say that, right, it's just pinging people on LinkedIn and doing it in such a way that it's just, you could just feel it. It's just sort of over the top, and you're sort of trying to make a withdrawal before you ever do a deposit. You've heard that analogy before. Sure. And I think at the end of the day, we today have such an opportunity to be able to help customers in a way that we've never been able to do it before. We have platforms that are specifically built to add value and start a conversation in an authentic and genuine way that will produce long-term results. The thing that we have trouble with as owners and small businesses in general, I think, is we are struggling with like the immediacy. We don't have the patience. We want to be able to just do something like turn on an ad and set it and forget it. We don't want to test things. We don't want to research our customers, or we don't want to do those things. And then what ends up happening is my dad always says, you get what you pay for. And so you're not investing in those areas that produce that long-term result. But my point to advertisers, my point to marketers, because I talk to marketers every day, just like you do. And I think they come and they ask, hey, how do I get improvement in this particular area? My advice usually, is step back a second and take a look at what are you producing that builds that trust, right? What are you producing to create some sort of helpful way where your customers know, or your prospects know, that you're set up as an authority on that particular topic? And how do you come across? Because a lot of it is personality. And it's like, if you come off as overbearing, just like, again, sort of stepping back and putting yourself in the buyer's shoes, how often do you really want to put yourself in a position where you're talking to an overbearing salesperson or whomever? And it's not very often.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. So I'm curious, because I ask this question a lot. Technology changes so quick, and your book, was written, the original book anyway, was written in 2007. Martech has come a long way. Mm-hmm. There were things back in the day that are common brands that didn't exist that 10, 12 years ago. And I'm kind of curious, what is the big sort of advancement that you've seen in martech, let's say over the last 5 years?
Sure. So one of the things that I've said for a couple decades now is, even though people want to talk about all these changes, really fundamentally what our job is as marketers, building enough trust so that somebody wants to exchange their money for something of value, is really all we've ever been, charged with doing. Now, as we've talked about already, a lot of what's really changed is that the buyer is much more in control now. The buyer really kind of goes on their own journey. So to me, the biggest change in martech that I think is working to our advantage, if you will, is some of the marketing automation that's available. And unfortunately, it's also a tool that I think can be abused. So a lot of people use some of the marketing automation things to you mentioned spamming people on LinkedIn, things like that can be done with some of these technologies because they seem cheap, because you can do them at scale. But where I look at any of the technology is to say, okay, how could I use this technology to actually serve my existing customers and prospects better? What are things that would make it a better journey for them? There's a lot of things that the technology allows us to do to make things have less. So, example I like to use all the time that's really simple is today's buyer, customer, today, if they want to come back, say for an eye exam, because it's time to do it again, we want to be able to go online, find a calendar, find a time, have that send us a meeting notice that has your address in it in Google Maps, without actually having to pick up the phone and call somebody and schedule and take part of what we want to experience today. But then when I go there to my eye exam, I still want to have a very efficient process. I want to know that you know who I am. I don't want to fill out 8 forms that all basically have the same information on them.
Yes.
Because you haven't figured out how to get them into a system that combines that data. Not to mention the fact that you already had that data anyway, because I was here a year ago. Those types of tools that we have now available create a better customer experience, but they're not to be used as a shield so that we don't ever have to actually talk to our customers. And so I think that to me is the greatest advancement, is that we can actually make things more efficient for the customer, not necessarily for us.
Yeah, I think something that's interesting to me, and I don't know what your thoughts on this are, but marketing automation has advanced a lot since 10 years ago. Initially, it was like you set up a trigger or a rule and it sort of does X, Y, or Z. And I think about all of the sort of the point solutions that are out there that have emerged over the last 5 to 10 years, where you've got your email solution, you have your sales CRM solution, you have your chatbot solution. I could sort of go down the list, your landing page builder,
Sure.
right? And you have all of these different pieces. And then you sort of like through all of that, you sort of have your analytics and you're trying to sort of figure out all of these different buyer touch points that you're talking about. And I am constantly amazed as I talk to marketers how they are struggling. Like their biggest struggle today is like trying to make all of those different pieces talk together and work together. And they've got an entrepreneur or a small business. They've got somebody who is technically savvy. That person is or like in the middle of it, trying to sort of stitch together all of the different pieces to get a view of the buyer journey. And I think those individual point solutions were not meant to necessarily talk together. That you sort of like try to do your best sort of stitching it together with something like Zapier or whatever. And you're trying to figure out like what is the driver that brought in that particular customer. So to me, like the biggest advancement and the biggest pain in the neck at the same time is making all of those particular things sort of talk and work together like they were meant to. And
certainly
I'm just kind of curious.
Better. Yeah, it's certainly gotten a lot better. It's really very few tools come out today without integrations because they realize that. And of course, the HubSpots and the Keeps of the world are, I think, really trying to tackle that. Here's your CRM with your email, with your shopping cart. But unfortunately, none of those typically they don't end up being best of class in any category because they're trying to really do something in such a big way. I think probably the advice I end up giving to people more often than not is find your core tool set. Don't try to bring in every plugin that'll do everything that you want. Find your core tool set and stick with them too, because I think that one of the challenges a lot of people have is a lot of these tools will update and they'll refresh, and it's V.4 is all new, and now we do these three things that we didn't used to do. And what I find people doing is jumping around a bunch, and I think that's probably as disruptive as anything, because they're always going to leapfrog each other. They're always going to get better, and then the next version of somebody else's tool is going to get better. But by locking in on and trying to really master a tool, I tell people all the time, the best CRM is the one how to use, and the one that people have adopted, and the one that people will put the data in, and not necessarily some new feature that the other tool comes up with. So simplify and lock down on just a few and get really good at going deep and using those.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's a large sort of pocket of small businesses that are patchworking things together, still trying to make them work. And I think entrepreneurs by nature are frenetic creatures, right? Yeah. We like to sign up for the newest, latest, and greatest thing. And I think if you sort of look at their credit card receipt every month for their subscriptions that they sign up for, it's pretty evident that we like to sign up for lots of different things because it's got the newest, latest bells and whistles. But I think when you're looking for that solution, it's got to be something that is not patchwork together, but is actually like it was built that way on purpose. And the data does talk across the different features, and it does all work together like it's supposed to, because that's doable today. 5 years ago it wasn't, or 7 years ago it wasn't, whereas today it is. So I think that's good advice. So I guess here's my last question. People, like for this show, a lot of the audience comes to the show because, as it's titled, Digital Marketing Swipe File, what we're trying to do is get something very practical and actionable that people would like to, they could listen to the podcast and then they could take a piece of advice and pause the podcast, write down some notes, restart the podcast, and listen to the rest of it. And they've learned something. There's something they've taken away with that they can sort of employ or roll out in their own campaigns or in their own marketing. So I guess, and this could be any topic, but I'm kind of curious, for you, at least on the channels side of things, the digital marketing channels, what is it that you are really seeing is working that is worth time and investment in building out?
I think probably the thing that I would recommend, and I've written extensively about this. It is in my new book, The Ultimate Marketing Engine, but I've also written several blog posts about it. We've really gone to structuring content around hub pages is probably the biggest from a channel standpoint. So we work with a lot of businesses that have been writing content maybe for years. They finally, got the word, and so they started blogging. But that content's just kind of a mess. It's like, what was the idea of the week? We'll write about that. And a lot of what we're doing is going into those websites and actually repurposing the content, or refreshing the content, I should say, but then structuring it so that there's kind of a home page for topics or playlists or whatever you want to call them around specific topics. And now we've got 20 blog posts that maybe all kind of play into the subtopics of that core topic. And if we structure them in a way that they are all linking to each other, they're all linking back to this hub page, we've really discovered that becomes a great tool for top of the funnel. So if somebody wants to know about us, because Google's going to reward us for that, so they're sending traffic to that broad, big topic, important topic. But it also becomes a great tool for salespeople, and we put lead capture devices obviously on those hub pages as well. So it really is a way to take content, maybe do less of it, restructure it, refresh that content, and then you be able to use it for many stages of the customer journey.
Yeah, I think that's great, and it's one of those things that doesn't get a lot of time and bandwidth from the team, because especially as a small business or an agency, you've got a certain amount of bandwidth to be able to execute on something. Usually, that's something that sort of falls off of the radar, because you're always looking at like focus, like how do I ROI this campaign? How do I show my worth as an agency? How do I get my ROI if I'm an SMB or an entrepreneur that's starting something up? I think one of the things that I would add to what you're doing that we've seen that's working really well, and I guess I should step back a second and just say, we're at an interesting position right now. So with the ability to step back and look at thousands of campaigns across tons of these different sectors, different industries, B2B to C, right? And we get to watch these campaigns in real time, and we see what's working and what's not working. And we do that sort of on a macro scale. Like we've got multiple companies that are in the same exact area or business topic or whatever that they're all employing sort of like different marketing tactics, and or different types of advertising campaigns. We can sort of see what's working and what's not working. And I'm constantly fascinated by the companies. Let me rephrase. The ones that I see that are doing a good job today are the ones that are taking your strategy of hub pages and content and addressing a problem that their particular customer has, and actually amplifying it with either paid search or paid social, mostly like Facebook or LinkedIn, where they're coming in and they're targeting really tightly a particular job title within that ICP that they've identified. And they're driving traffic to those people. They're creating content for those particular people that they know have a particular pain point, right? Because to go all the way back to the beginning of this conversation, like they know who their customer is, they know what their ICP is, and they amplify or accelerate a lot of the content that they're producing. So a lot of times you'll see SEO, it kicks in, or it's 6 months, it's 12 months. It takes time to sort of build that out and really get a decent amount of traction in some cases for a new piece of content. But there's a way today to be able to take your message and basically push it or display it in front of a particular ICP that you have, and then bring them to that page so that you're not waiting around for the person to be able to stumble across it in Google search or organic. And I find that some of the more successful advertisers that we have been, just campaigns that we see, are employing that kind of tactic.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. And Eric, hopefully we can get this edited out, but I'm gone over time. I'm back to back here. We're over an hour.
Yeah. Let's do that. So, hey, let me ask this final question real quick, because I want to, So John, it's been great in talking to you. I've really enjoyed it. I was wondering, how do people get a hold of you? How do they get to talk to you?
Sure. So the best way to find out if you want to find anything about my new book, it's just theultimatemarketingengine.com, and you can get some free chapters there. There's actually a companion course as well. If you pre-order the book, you can get that companion course. If you want to just find out anything I've been working on the last couple of decades, it's just ducttapemarketing.com, DUCTAPE marketing.com.
John, it's been great catching up with you. We need to do it again
Awesome.
soon.
Okay. Thanks, Eric.
Right.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.